Daja and welcome to this Total War 3 Kingdoms video on the melee infantry in the game. This is just going to go through the units, explaining what their role may be in the army based on their stats. Hopefully helping you get your head around all the units in 3 Kingdoms, as it can be a daunting task to learn all these new units when a new Total War game comes out. This video will of course be on the melee infantry. I'll do a separate video for the spears, for the missiles and for the cavalry, so overall we'll get through all units in the game, including DLC factions who will get their own guides. So without further ado, Zol! So first up on the scales, a light infantry in Axeband. They're an assault style unit, which means they're great at dishing out damage, as the majority of their weapon strength is armor piercing, so going to be good against those heavier units, at least for doing some damage. They are still a cheap unit, they don't have a lot of armor or morale, but they do have a shield so they can survive missile attacks pretty well, making them a great light infantry to charge up front to take some of the missiles and to get straight into the enemy, making good use of their charge bonus. A strong early game damage dealer / meat shield. And then you've got Sabre Militia, who are very much the same as Axeband to be honest, except their damage is the other way around. They have good non-armor piercing damage and not a lot of armor piercing damage. So try to get them fighting lighter targets. They do have a fair amount more armor than Axeband though, and a few other slightly improved stats, but mostly very similar units. One is just better at killing heavy armor than the other. And then you've got Sabre Infantry, who are very much the same as the previous unit, they just have a good amount more armor, so they're better at surviving, making them more of a front line unit as the role tells us. So going to be a little bit better at surviving and staying and fighting longer than the assault units might, but still not far dissimilar to the Sabre Militia, just a slightly improved version. Onto Jian Sword Guards. Now these are very much a tier up from the previous units. They're very much a defensive frontline unit. They've got some great stats for avoiding damage, a fair amount of armor, good shield protection, much better morale, and a fair amount of both armor piercing and non-armor piercing damage. So these are really one of your best choices for a cheaper frontline option, if you can of course afford to field them. And you may come across Mercenary Infantry, who are very much the same as Axeband to be honest. They're a medium axe infantry, their stats are pretty similar, they just have better armor and better melee evasion, same amount of damage output overall, just a bit slower, same morale, yeah, just heavier Axeband. Great for getting after those heavily armoured units, charging into front lines, and these ones will just survive a bit better. Onto a more fancy unit in the Pearl Dragons. Now these boys are pretty unique because while they run around with no armor on, they're very good at avoiding damage. They've got high missile evasion chance, high melee evasion chance, so they're really good at just not getting hit. They can dish out a good amount of both kinds of damage, although mostly non-armor piercing damage, with a decent charge bonus and morale as well. Their weakness though, like all infantry, is going to be cavalry though. If they get hit by cavalry, there's no way they can dodge or deflect that. They are going to get absolutely smashed. So try not to let them get charged by cavalry or it will very quickly be the end of them. And then you've got your Yellow Dragons. These are light axe infantry. Again, similar damage stats to other axe infantry, but these boys are far superior. They've got a much bigger charge bonus, a whole lot of morale, fantastic missile block chance because of that huge shield, but they are again lacking in armor and melee evasion as well actually. So cav charges really going to mess these boys up, but a good frontline charging choice because of that missile defense. They also won't be slowed by terrain. And now for a unit that's unique to only a few factions, the Warriors of the Left. These are heavy sword infantry. As you can see, they've got a whole lot of armor on, a whole lot of melee evasion, good armor piercing damage and non-armor piercing damage, and a whole lot of morale. So long story short, these boys are going to be very tough to try and churn your way through with melee infantry. They'll be great for holding and great for dishing out a bit of damage, but their big weakness is actually missiles, as they have no kind of missile defense, so armor piercing missiles may get rid of them very quick. Powerful in melee, but 2 glaring weaknesses in missiles and cavalry. They're also immune to scare and disciplined. And then we've got the Rapid Tiger Infantry, who are again a frontline unit. They are medium sword infantry now, so decent armor, decent melee evasion, and again fairly even weapon strength in both normal and armor piercing damage. Again, weaknesses to missiles and cavalry, and again they're immune to scare and they are disciplined. Disciplined means they don't run away if their general dies, by the way. If you haven't figured it out, they're basically just a less armored version of the Warriors of the Left. And an exclusive unit for Zhangyan, the Black Mountain Marauders. These are very much just like Axeband from earlier, with better damage output, better charge bonus, more armor piercing damage, but no armor and no missile defense though, makes them very vulnerable. However, their standout trait is their guerrilla deployment and their scare ability, so great for some ambushes, fantastic if you can flank them round and get into the back of the enemies and scare them, as well as attack them in the rear, give them lots of morale penalties, which will likely rout them off quickly. Cav charges and missiles though, gonna put these boys in the ground. And lastly, a couple more faction exclusive units, the Hidden Axes. Again, Axe Infantry, great armor piercing damage, yada yada, same as other Axe Infantry, basically low armor, but they have their own bow, so they've got their own ranged attack, they can do both melee or ranged, fairly decent damage on both armor piercing and non-armor piercing damage for that bow, although they don't have a great deal of ammunition. But again, they have guerrilla deployment, scare, so they can be a sneaky unit. They also have stalk and snipe, so these boys will stay hidden most of the time, and they can stay hidden while firing. So a really unique unit, although big weaknesses to missiles and cavalry of course. And then the Fists of the Bandit Queen, who are very much the same as that previous unit, just with more armor on, although they don't have all the sneaky abilities, but they do have Flaming Shot, which certainly has its uses. So with those two things, more armor and Flaming Shot, they're going to be used slightly differently than the Hidden Axes. Definitely useful in many situations, provided you can protect them. So there you go, all the different melee infantry units in Total War 3 Kingdoms. Hopefully this gives you some clarity and helps you differentiate between the different units and understand where they're supposed to be used and why. As I mentioned, I'll be doing the other unit types in separate videos as well, so keep an eye out for those. I hope you've enjoyed this, thanks for watching, 我们以后见面。